guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Anshula, and today I'm going to be doing again book shopping with me and a recent reads vlog. So I went to the bookshop several months ago, but I'm doing the speaking portion now that I've read all the books that we hauled. The bookstore that we went to was in Waco, which is about 3 hours from where I live. The bookstore itself was called Fabled. It was the most whimsical, magical bookstore that I've been to.
We can take it slow, make sure we do this right. Canceled all my plans to be with you tonight. So just sit with me, talking to the night until the morning, building chemistry. I don't think I ever wanna go, come closer next to me. Trying to find another way to say this, but I think we were meant to be.
By the way, I made myself this glass of passion fruit tea, so that's what I'm drinking while filming this video. So right when you walk in, there's a giant owl. This owl was the size of my body, but it was so cute. It was just a very friendly, woodsy, folksy owl, and I felt like I was right in a fairy tale, which is what you want to be in every time you walk into a bookstore. So I think they nailed the ambiance of this bookstore. One of the details that I loved the most was this Chronicles of Narnia entrance to the children's book section. Originally, I didn't notice it because there was a main entrance to the children's book section, but as you walk towards the young adult section, there was this cabinet door, and I originally noticed it. I was like, oh cool, that looks like the door from Chronicles of Narnia. But then when you go into the actual children's book section, on the other side there's a coat closet. It's filled with a bunch of fluffy winter coats, and this whole children's room has white bookshelves and the other room has darker colored bookshelves, so it does feel like you're in this winter wonderland when you walk in, and I thought that was really cutely done. Once I had that moment of realization when I realized that the cabinet door actually led to the coat closet, I thought this is the coolest bookstore ever, which I say for every bookstore that I've been to, but honestly I just love this one so much. There was also a cafe in this bookstore, which I thought was really cute. They seemed like they had a really good coffee selection. There's also a lot of study areas and study desks. This is a place I would definitely love to work in. So there were 3 parts of the bookstore besides the children's section that really stood out to me, and I ended up picking a book from each of these sections. So the first book that I want to talk about is The Midnight Library by Haig. I absolutely love this novel. This is a magical realism contemporary adult novel filled with so many important life messages and themes, and I thought it was done in a very clever and interesting way. So our main character is called Nora Seed. For the most part of the book, she is in between the state of life and death. She's at a place called the Midnight Library where her former school librarian, Mrs. Elm, guides her to picking outcomes for different lives that she could have had based on different decisions that she made, and she gets to live those lives. And so it feels like a collection of short stories, so it's not a book that you have to heavily commit to, even though it's something that you can easily read in a day. I started reading this on the car ride back. I was breezing through it, even though it was very heavy, and I found myself needing to take short little pauses. It's always been in the back of my head since I started reading it, and it's still in the back of my head. It's the kind of book where the themes and messages that play out linger in your mind long afterwards because there's so much to think about. It's just so packed with this motivational life message, but it's done in this really clever and interesting way, and I think it's so cool. So I thought that each of the stories was really interesting because Nora does everything from being a glaciologist to being a professor, and you get to see all these different careers and lives that she could have had. This book is so heavy on the theme of what are your regrets, what could you have done differently, and it's almost like what are you in control of in your life in terms of the decisions that you can make and the outcomes that can happen. Some outcomes are going to happen regardless, but some outcomes you do have a little bit more control of, and I think this book really addressed that in a fascinating and really well done way. I will definitely be picking up another book by this author because I found the writing style also to be very easygoing. It made it really easy to understand the character in a very simple way, but the depth of emotions that Nora has is very complex, and I think that's a really hard line to balance, but Matt Haig does it brilliantly in this book. Nora goes through all of these emotions that we have as human beings. She goes through grief and satisfaction, gratitude and anger, fear, 1,000 different emotions that are captured in under 300 pages. There was a beauty to the brevity of this novel because every story that was selected had a meaning, and I think it was just executed flawlessly. I'm trying not to spoil it, but if he goes with this ending in particular, it's going to be a way more inspirational novel. I'm really glad that he delivered on the ending that I expected him to, because I would have been an absolute wreck otherwise, I was really happy. This was a staff pick, and when I read the description of this being a book that makes you think for a long time, I immediately knew I had to have it. Also, because it's magical realism, the magic system is not fully explained, but you get hints at it, and I think the hints at it add to the philosophy behind the novel, and I thought that was really interesting. It just added a whole other layer. And I think my favorite story was when Nora was a glaciologist. We saw a completely different side of Nora during that life that she lived. Honestly, all of them were really interesting to see. She's so cute. Hi, Ducky. Sorry, Midnight Library. I also thought it was really interesting to see how Nora's relationship with other characters developed while she was in other lives and not necessarily having the same experiences with these other characters, but in a way you got to see more of her original relationship based on what she was thinking about. So I think those were really well done, and I think it's seamlessly flitted between past and present in terms of what Nora was thinking about related to her past and the present life that she was living. So that's the first book that I wanted to talk about. I'm so glad that I picked that one up. So the second section that I really enjoyed in Fabled was they had this giant shelf dedicated to writing books. So the next book that I picked up was also a 5-star read for me. It was Madeleine L'Engle herself. These are reflections on writing life. Honestly gonna go back to Fabled so I can pick up more 5-star reads because everything I picked up ended up being a 5-star read. I ended up reading this front to back, and it took me a day, but it's one that I find myself constantly referring to and re-referring to because there was so much to take away from it. I think Madeleine L'Engle really captured creativity and what it's like to be a writer, but also provide a lot of inspiration and useful advice on writing. I just felt like there was so much I could take away from it, and I absolutely loved every second of this. This book was constantly challenging me to think about things from different perspectives. This is now my go-to book for writing advice and writing inspiration. I just love reading books like this. There's another dog. It's so cute. So the last book that I want to talk about is Sherlock Holmes. I'm actually going to be discussing this book a little more in depth in a later video, so I'm going to briefly talk about this. This was in the part of Fabled where the classics were. Fabled carries a lot of beautiful aesthetic classics editions.
So just sit with me, talking through the night into the morning, building chemistry. I don't think I ever wanna go come closer next to me.
So this one contains 4 stories, Study in Scarlet, The Valley of Fear, The Sign of the Floor, and The Hound of Baskervilles. I absolutely love Sherlock Holmes mysteries. I read them many moons ago. The feeling I had when I read these books, I distinctly remember how much I enjoyed them, and I distinctly remember the stories as well because they had that much of a lasting impression on my mind. These are just so smartly done. I love how much is packed into a very brief story. I do like Sherlock Holmes's character, and the way Holmes approaches solving them is even more interesting sometimes than the stories themselves. This is one that I highly recommend, and I'm so glad I have it in my collection now. This is the last book that I picked up from Fabled. It is getting dark. Before it gets too dark to say this, thank you so much for watching. Bye guys!